Check the wall clock, sir.
What's in there and how did you get in here?
Tell me.
The office door was shut. 12 people stood inside, dressed in their best suits, waiting for old man Paul Lowe to sign his will. Then a 13-year-old boy pushed through the crowd, pointed at the wall, and said 4 words that stopped the room cold. "Check the wall clock, sir." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And Paul Lowe, 68 years old, and one of the richest men in New York, slowly turned his head toward the clock hanging above his desk. To understand why that moment mattered, you have to go back 3 weeks, to the day a boy named Sam Dean first walked into that mansion, carrying nothing but a mop bucket and a pair of sharp eyes. Sam Dean lived with his mother, Loretta, in a small apartment in Queens. Loretta cleaned houses for a living, and one of those houses happened to belong to Paul Lowe, a man so wealthy that his mansion on the Upper East Side had its own elevator, its own movie theater, and a garden bigger than the park near Sam's school. Every Saturday, Loretta brought Sam along to help carry supplies. He wasn't supposed to touch anything. He wasn't supposed to talk to the family. He was just supposed to sit in the kitchen, do his homework, and wait. But Sam was the kind of boy who noticed things. He noticed which stairs creaked. He noticed that the housekeeper, Miss Ruby, always hummed the same gospel song when she dusted. He noticed that the old butler, Mr. Whitfield, walked with a slight limp on rainy days. And most of all, he noticed people. That's how he first noticed her. Her name was Renee Cole. She was 34 years old, beautiful, always smiling, and always on Paul Lowe's arm at every dinner and every party. The staff called her Miss Renee to her face and whispered other things behind her back. "She's after his money," Miss Ruby said one afternoon, scrubbing a pot a little too hard. "Mark my words." Loretta shushed her. "That's not our business, Ruby." But Sam was listening. Sam was always listening. The first time Sam saw something strange, it was a Tuesday, and he wasn't even supposed to be in the house. Loretta had a doctor's appointment, so she dropped Sam off early, and Mr. Whitfield let him wait in the small library near Mr. Lowe's office, while his mother finished her shift later that evening. Sam was reading a comic book on the library floor when he heard footsteps. He peeked around the doorway and saw Renee Cole slip into Mr. Lowe's office, alone, holding a small black box in her hand. Mr. Lowe was in Boston that week for a business meeting. The office should have been empty. Sam watched, quiet as a shadow, as Renee walked straight to the antique wall clock hanging behind the big mahogany desk. It was Mr. Lowe's favorite clock, a gift from his late wife Margaret, who had passed away 5 years earlier. Everybody in the house knew not to touch that clock. Renee opened the little glass door on the front of the clock, reached inside, and did something with her fingers behind the clock's wooden frame. Then she stepped back, looked at her phone, smiled, and quietly left the room. Sam didn't understand what he'd seen. Not yet, but something about it felt wrong, the way it feels wrong when you see a kid slip something into their backpack at the store. He didn't say anything. He just remembered it, tucked away in the back of his mind like a marble in a pocket. 2 weeks passed. Sam kept coming to the mansion with his mother, and he kept his eyes open. He noticed that whenever Mr. Lowe worked in his office, Renee always found a reason to be somewhere close. Sometimes she brought him tea. Sometimes she just sat on the leather couch, scrolling through her phone, saying nothing. He noticed that she asked Mr. Lowe a lot of questions about his safe. Not directly, but sneaky questions, wrapped up in sweet conversation. "Baby, you really keep everything important in that old safe. Isn't that risky? What if you forget the code one day?" Mr. Lowe would laugh his big, booming laugh and say, "Renee, my dear, I've had that code memorized for 30 years. Nobody's forgetting it, least of all me." And Renee would smile and change the subject. But Sam saw her eyes. They didn't smile the way the rest of her face did. One Saturday, Sam was polishing the brass door handles near the office, a small job Mr. Whitfield had given him to earn a few extra dollars, when he heard Mr. Lowe's voice through the slightly open door. "Everything is in that safe, my will. The deed to this house, my father's letters, everything that matters." Sam froze, polishing cloth in his hand, and listened as Mr. Lowe continued talking to his lawyer, a serious man named Mr. Grant, who visited every few weeks. The safe code is the numbers of the day my Margaret and I got married. Nobody knows that but me. Nobody. Sam's stomach twisted. Because Sam remembered something. He remembered a photograph, framed and sitting on the shelf right below that very wall clock. A wedding photo of Paul and Margaret Lowe, with the date written in gold cursive letters at the bottom. June 14th, 1981. Anyone who looked closely enough at that photo could figure out the code. And anyone who wanted to see what was happening in that office, without ever stepping inside it, would need a camera. A hidden one. Somewhere high up. Somewhere that could see the whole room, the desk, the safe behind the bookshelf, and Mr. Lowe's hands whenever he typed in the numbers. Somewhere like inside an antique wall clock that nobody was allowed to touch. Sam didn't tell anyone right away. He was just a kid. Who would believe him? Renee Cole was a grown woman who wore designer dresses and drove a car worth more than Sam's whole apartment building. Sam was a 13-year-old boy who mopped floors on weekends. But that night, lying in his bed in Queens, Sam couldn't stop thinking about it. He thought about his mother, who worked so hard every single day, and always told him, "Do the right thing, even when it's hard, Sam. Especially when it's hard." He thought about Mr. Lowe, who wasn't a bad man. Gruff sometimes, yes. Strict about his rules, yes. But he always said good morning to Loretta by name. He always asked about Sam's grades. Once, when Sam mentioned he liked chess, Mr. Lowe spent 20 minutes teaching him how to set up a proper opening, right there in the kitchen, like Sam mattered. Sam decided he had to find proof. Real proof, not just a feeling in his gut. The next Saturday, Sam arrived early with his mother, before the sun had even fully come up. While Loretta unloaded the cleaning supplies, Sam slipped away and made his way to the office. His heart pounded in his chest, the entire walk down that long hallway. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open slowly. The office was empty and quiet, sunlight streaming in through tall windows, dust floating in the golden light. Sam walked straight to the wall clock and stood on his tiptoes, studying it the way he'd studied it from across the room weeks earlier. Up close, he could see it now. A tiny black dot, no bigger than a shirt button, tucked into the bottom corner of the clock's wooden frame, hidden behind one of the carved wooden vines that decorated the edge. If you weren't looking for it, you would never see it. It looked just like part of the design. Sam's hands were shaking, but he pulled out the old flip phone his mother had given him for emergencies, the one with a tiny camera on the back, and took a picture. Then another, closer. Then he backed away slowly and left the room, careful not to touch anything. Now he had proof. But proof of what, exactly? A tiny black dot on a clock. Nobody was going to believe a kid pointing at a wall clock and yelling, "Hidden camera." He needed more. That week, Sam barely slept. He kept replaying the sight of Renee's fingers moving behind the clock, over and over, like a scene stuck on repeat. At school, his teacher called his name twice during math class before he even noticed he was being spoken to. His best friend, Tyrell, nudged him at lunch. "Yo, you good? You've been acting weird all week." Sam almost told him everything right there in the cafeteria, but he stopped himself. If word got back to the wrong person, it could ruin everything. So instead, he just shrugged. Just tired, that's all. But it wasn't tiring. It was the weight of knowing something big, something dangerous, and not knowing what to do with it. Sam thought about all the detective shows he used to watch with his mother on Friday nights, how the detectives never rushed in without a plan. They gathered evidence first. They waited for the right moment. Sam decided he needed to be like those detectives. Careful, patient, smart. He thought hard about what to do next. He couldn't go to Mr. Lowe directly, not without more evidence. And he definitely couldn't confront Renee Cole. So he did what any smart kid would do. He asked for help from someone he trusted. His older cousin, Marcus, was 19 and studying computer science at a community college in the Bronx. Marcus loved gadgets and always had some new piece of tech he was tinkering with. That Sunday, Sam rode the subway to Marcus's place and showed him the photos. Marcus zoomed in on his laptop screen, squinting at the tiny black dot. "Sam," he said slowly, "that's a camera. A real one. Wireless, probably. Somebody's watching that room. I knew it." Sam whispered. But here's the thing, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair. A camera like that, it's usually connected to an app on somebody's phone. If we can find out whose phone it's connected to, we'd have real proof. Otherwise, it's just your word against theirs. Sam chewed his lip. How do we find that out? Marcus thought for a moment, then smiled. You said this camera has been up there almost a month, right? These little spy cameras, they usually only have a few weeks of battery. Somebody's going to need to change that battery soon, or swap the whole camera out. When they do, we catch them in the act. For the next several days, Sam kept a careful watch, without ever making it obvious. He helped his mother clean near the office more often than usual. He volunteered to dust the library shelves. He made himself a quiet, unnoticed presence in that part of the house, just a kid doing chores. On Thursday afternoon, his patience paid off. Mr. Lowe had gone to a business lunch downtown, and the house was unusually quiet. Sam was in the library, pretending to organize books, when he heard the office door creak open. He peeked around the corner and saw Renee Cole again, standing on a small step stool she must have brought with her, reaching up into the wall clock with a tiny screwdriver. Sam's heart raced. This was it. This was his chance. He pulled out his mother's flip phone, hands trembling, and pressed record on the video camera. It wasn't the clearest video in the world. The phone was old, and the screen was small, but it clearly showed Renee Cole standing on the stool, opening the back panel of the clock, and swapping something small and black for another matching device. She climbed down, tucked the old camera into her purse, smoothed her dress, and walked out of the office like nothing had happened. Sam stayed hidden behind the bookshelf until her footsteps faded away down the hall. Then he let out a breath he didn't even realize he'd been holding. Now Sam had a video, real proof, but he still had a problem. If he showed this video to the wrong person, or if Renee found out he'd been watching her, things could go very badly. She was powerful in that house. She could get him and his mother fired with one phone call. Sam knew he needed to think this through carefully, the way Mr. Lowe had taught him to think through a chess game. Every move had a consequence. He couldn't just run into the office yelling. That night, Sam told his mother everything. Loretta listened quietly, her face growing more serious with every word. When Sam finished, she was silent for a long moment. Sam, she finally said, this is bigger than us. You understand that, if you're right about this, we could lose our jobs just for knowing about it, or worse. I know, Mama, but it's not right. She's spying on him. She wants his safe code. What if she's planning to take everything, his will, his house, all of it? Loretta rubbed her forehead, thinking. Then she looked at her son. Really looked at him. The way mothers do when they're deciding whether their child has grown up faster than they realized. Mr. Lowe has always been fair to us, she said slowly. Fairer than most people in this city ever are to folks like us. I think we owe him the truth. But we do this the smart way, not the loud way. The smart way, they decided, was to go straight to Mr. Whitfield, the old butler who had worked for the Lowe family for over 20 years. If anyone in that house could be trusted completely, it was him. Mr. Whitfield watched the shaky video on Sam's flip phone twice, his face growing darker each time. When it finished, he sat back in his chair and rubbed his chin. I always had a feeling about that woman, he muttered. Too sweet, too interested in things that weren't hers to be interested in. What do we do? Sir! Mr. Whitfield thought for a long moment. Mr. Lowe has a meeting with his lawyer next week to finalize his will. Miss Renee has been pushing him to hurry that meeting along, which I found strange, considering he's been talking about updating that will for over a year without any rush. Now suddenly she's eager. He looked at Sam. If she's been watching him enter that safe code, she's likely been waiting for the will to be signed and locked away, so she can get to it before anyone realizes something's wrong. We don't have much time. So what do we do? Sam asked again. Mr. Whitfield's eyes settled on Sam with something like respect. We tell him, all of us, together, and we show him the proof in front of witnesses, so nobody can call you a liar or say you made it up. The meeting was set for the following Saturday morning. Mr. Grant, the lawyer, arrived at 10 o'clock sharp, along with two other people Sam didn't recognize, a notary and an assistant. Renee arrived shortly after, dressed elegantly, smiling her usual warm smile, holding a cup of coffee she'd made herself. Sam's stomach was in knots the entire morning. He kept the flip phone in his pocket, the video already loaded and ready, his thumb resting nervously on the screen. At 11, everyone gathered in Mr. Lowe's office. The safe was hidden behind a sliding bookshelf on the far wall, and everyone knew that once Mr. Lowe signed the papers on his desk, he would walk to that safe, enter his code, and place the finished will inside for safekeeping, exactly like he did with every important document. Mr. Lowe sat at his desk, pen in hand, ready to sign. Renee stood close beside him, one hand resting gently on his shoulder, watching everything with careful eyes. Sam stood near the back of the room, with his mother and Mr. Whitfield, his heart hammering against his ribs. Mr. Lowe lifted the pen toward the paper. This was the moment. If Sam didn't speak now, it would be too late. He stepped forward, pushing past two of the lawyer's assistants, and said the 4 words that would change everything. "Check the wall clock, sir." For a second, nobody moved. The only sound in the room was the soft ticking of the very clock Sam had just pointed at, steady and calm, as if it had no idea it was about to be caught in the act. Every head in the room turned toward the small boy standing in the middle of all those important adults. Mr. Lowe lowered his pen slowly, his thick grey eyebrows pulling together in confusion. "Excuse me?" he said. "The wall clock, sir," Sam repeated, his voice shaking but steady enough to be heard. "There's a camera hidden inside it. Somebody's been watching you type in your safe code." The room went dead silent. Renee's hand tightened slightly on Mr. Lowe's shoulder, her smile freezing in place like a mask that had suddenly gotten too tight. "That's ridiculous," she said quickly, her voice a little too high. "Paul, honey, this child is just a housekeeper's son. He doesn't know what he's talking about." Mr. Lowe held up a hand, silencing her, his eyes fixed on Sam. "Boy," he said slowly, "you'd better have proof for a claim like that." Sam pulled the flip phone from his pocket, with trembling hands. "I do, sir. I have a video." He walked forward, and Mr. Whitfield stepped up beside him, placing a steady hand on Sam's shoulder for support. Together, they showed Mr. Lowe the small screen. The room watched as the grainy footage played, Renee Cole climbing onto a step stool, opening the back of the antique clock, and swapping a small black device with practiced, careful hands. Nobody said a word. Mr. Grant, the lawyer, leaned in close, watching the video twice with narrowed eyes. The color drained slowly from Renee's face. Mr. Lowe stood up from his desk, walked to the wall clock, and reached behind the carved wooden frame with his own thick fingers. A moment later, he pulled out a tiny black object, no bigger than a coat button, and held it up for the whole room to see. "Well," he said quietly, his voice dangerously calm, "it appears the boy was telling the truth." What happened next moved quickly. Renee tried to explain, her voice climbing higher with every word, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that she'd only been curious, that she loved him, that this was all some kind of mistake. But Mr. Grant, ever the careful lawyer, had already pulled out his own phone and was quietly making notes. "Mr. Lowe," he said, "given this discovery, I strongly recommend we pause the signing until security can properly investigate this matter." Mr. Lowe nodded slowly, his jaw tight, his eyes never leaving Renee's face. 5 years of grief since losing Margaret, and in that time, this woman had wormed her way into his life, his home, his heart, all while planning to steal everything he'd spent a lifetime building. "Renee," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "I think it's time you left my house." Security escorted her out within the hour. She didn't cry, and she didn't apologize. She simply gathered her things, her face cold and unreadable, and walked out through the same front doors she'd walked through 100 times before. Except this time, she never came back. That afternoon, after everyone else had gone home, Mr. Lowe called Sam into his office. Sam walked in nervously, unsure if he was in trouble for interrupting such an important meeting. Instead, Mr. Lowe gestured to the chair across from his desk, the same chair where important lawyers and business partners usually sat. "Sit down, son," he said. Sam sat, hands folded tightly in his lap. Mr. Lowe studied him for a long moment, The way he might study a difficult chess position, searching for the right move. You could have said nothing, he finally said. It would have been easier, safer even, for you and your mother. Why didn't you? Sam thought about it carefully before answering. My mama always says, doing the right thing is supposed to be hard, Mr. Lowe. If it was easy, everybody would do it. The old man's stern face slowly softened into something Sam had never quite seen there before. A real, genuine smile, small but warm. Your mother, Mr. Lowe said, sounds like a very wise woman. She is, sir. Mr. Lowe leaned back in his chair. You saved everything I've worked for, Sam. My house, my company, my father's legacy, all of it. That woman would have taken it all, and I never would have known until it was too late. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the desk toward Sam. This isn't a reward, he said. This is a promise. Every year, for as long as you want it, your education is paid for. Every school, every book, every single thing you need to become whatever it is you want to become. You understand me? Sam stared at the envelope, speechless. And, Mr. Lowe added, a twinkle returning to his tired eyes, I still owe you a proper chess rematch. You never did beat me fair and square. For the first time all day, Sam grinned, a real 13-year-old grin, wide and bright. I've been practicing, sir. Next time, I'm winning. Mr. Lowe let out a booming laugh, the first real laugh anyone had heard from him in weeks. We'll see about that, young man. We'll see about that. Word spread quietly through the mansion staff over the following days, the way stories always do in a big house, full of people who see everything and say nothing. Miss Ruby hugged Sam so tight he could barely breathe, telling him over and over how proud she was. Mr. Whitfield shook his hand like he was greeting a grown man, not a kid who still had homework due on Monday. Loretta cried when she found out about the scholarship, right there in the kitchen, holding her son's face in both hands, like she couldn't believe how lucky she was. You did good, baby, she whispered. You did so good. Sam just smiled, tired but happy, thinking about how strange it was that everything had started with one small black dot on the edge of an old wall clock, something nobody else had bothered to notice. But Sam noticed. Sam always noticed. And from that day forward, whenever anyone in that house had a question they couldn't quite answer, whenever something felt just a little bit off, they had a new saying, one that started as a joke among the staff, but slowly became something more. When in doubt, they'd say with a smile, check the wall clock.